In this video, I'm going to create the last function that will be used to write the results to an external file. Currently, the results display on monitor or the console. We can also have it to send the results to a file. There are times when you want the output not to display. It may be too numerous or large to display on the screen. Also, for security purposes, you may want to write your results to a file, and that's exactly what we're going to do. In previous programs, what you've been doing is doing a screenshot of your output, or you may save your output in Python as a text file and assign appropriate name for that file. However, most all programs out there, programming languages out there, there is a way for the computer to read data from a file, an external file, as well as write files, write the results, the data, as well as the results to a file. And it's fairly straightforward because it uses some built-in functions or methods. The open, the read, the write, and the close methods and functions are used. However, that file that you're going to create will be stored in the same folder where your Python source code would be stored. So whatever your Python program is, when it creates that external file, it'll store it by default in the same folder, unless we change the path of the directory rather. Using Python to write the output to a file rather than displaying it on the screen, or you can still display on the screen as well as write it to a file. We'll use Python exclusively to create these external files to store output or to read the data. In this example, we will be showing you how to create a function to write your output to a file. In this example, we're going to use the open and the write functions. Because we're going to use the with clause, you don't have to use a statement to close the file, because the with clause ensures that the file will properly close after either reading from or writing to a file. So in the pseudocode for the miles per gallon program, we're going to have a function to write the results. So we'll write the report heading. Basically, we'll put the report heading there. Write the miles driven, the gallons used, and the miles per gallon to a file. So all this is going to be written to an external file, and that's what the pseudocode looks like. So now let's look at Python. So we're going to define a function, and it'll be stored on the appropriate storage device. And what we're going to write is the miles, the gallons, and the mpg, or the miles per gallon. Now, in this class, I want you to type the file name in. I do not want it to be merely text in. You can do that, but I want to have that flexibility of the user adding the file name they wish to enter. So we're going to say enter a file name where you wish to write the output. And I'll just say file name is equal to the strip method in Python is very valuable in that when a user enters their data, that there could be blank spaces before or after the entry, or the computer trying to read the data from a file. So, and that includes even using a tab or a new line, etc. So it will strip that input of any trailing or leading white spaces from that string. So that's a very important one to use. So when we type file name is equal to input strip, it will strip it of any leading or trailing spaces. The next step is we're going to open a file for writing the output. To make sure that the file exists and there are no problems with the file being opened, we're going to use the exception. We're going to use the exception statement. Try with open. With is the clause that we're going to use. Open will allow the program to open this file that you just told the computer to enter. And I want to make sure that when you open that file, we're going to assume that it will have the .txt as the extension, and we want to make sure that the mode is for writing, and we want the computer to associate with with an object for writing. So when we use this long phrase, all we're doing is saying, rather than us having open file name and all this for writing, as soon as we reference the object file, the computer will know that it is opening up a file and writing the results to that device. And you notice that it did indent. When I typed in colon, it did the indentation. So we're going to say file.write instead of saying print as we did here. So we'll do the same thing, except we'll just say file.write. And so the easiest step would actually be to copy all of these statements and just change the function. Indent one more time. And wherever I see write, I'm going to say print rather. Wherever I see the function print, I'll just say file.write. An easy way to make this change would be to go to the edit menu, choose replace, and say print. We'll replace that with the file object .write. We find it and replace, find, replace, find, replace. I won't say replace all because it will replace all the print statements, and I do not want it to do that. I only want it to replace the statements that are associated with where I'm going to create that file for writing. And I'm going to add the except clause and an IO error as E. Now that we've created the function to write the results, let us make sure that when we have M for the miles driven, G for gallons used, and MPG. We've got all of that in the function. That seems to be working okay. And here is the entire function to write the results to an output file, and we just use an exception so that if there's anything going on and there's no permission to write to that storage location, it's going to give us a message rather than crashing, or there's a problem with the file that you're looking for is not available. Okay, so we'll say that an error has occurred. Otherwise what we can do is say write the results to, and then whatever that file name is. So let's run the program. So we run this program, enter the miles driven and the number of gallons used. It generated a report on the screen. It just echo printed what we said for it to print. Now enter a file name where you wish to write the output. This is where we're going to write it, and it's good to always put a little comment to say it has been written to the file. Now let's find that file. So here's the file that has been written, and let's just make sure that that's the correct file itself. So it says The MPG report output text file has been written to wherever my program was stored. That is the same directory or folder where it is going to be written, and this is it right here. Let's open it up. It wrote it, but look how it's all over the place. The reason for that is that the computer, it writes a line, but it never does a line feed, so it's wrapping everything around. So that's why it looks discombobulated. So what we need to do is at the end of every, just before ending every write line, we're going to have to add a new line to that, to each of these lines here. So we'll do that. The print function automatically does a line feed after a line is being displayed, and it automatically does a line feed to go down to the next line, but the write function doesn't do that. So you have to add that's why for every line that is written to the output file, you have to add the new line. So let's run the program again. And now we'll be asked to, what's the name of the file where we wish to write the results? I'll just say miles per gallon report. Press the enter key, and it tells me that the results written to miles per gallon report.txt. There's my prompt, my Python prompt, and let's open up that file. Here is that file that has been created, miles per gallon report, and let's open it up. I just double clicked on it, and now you see it did a line feed. It printed out the monthly report. I'll make this look a little bit larger for you to see. You have your separating lines: miles per gallon monthly report, miles driven, gallons used, miles per gallon. Okay. Look at the code very carefully. And the program is growing because we are dividing it into manageable modules or pieces. And after we define the particular function, you have to call the function. And we'll just, okay, you may feel free to look at this entire video as many times as necessary. And also don't forget to ask your professor questions or go to tutoring.